Hi, welcome to Sassy Stuff. My name's Blythe,
And I'm Emma Wagner.
and we're so excited to be here. First week of college football this past weekend. So many exciting games. A lot of things we saw from teams that we kind of expected, and then a lot of unexpected turns. So we're going to jump right into it. We're going to talk all things SEC, and let's get going.
So first, I want to start off talking about that Georgia-Clemson game. The score ended up being 34-3. Some highlights to me was with the suspension of Trevor Etienne and the injury of Roderick Bronson, Nate Frazier had the opportunity to step up with the Georgia offense. He did not disappoint, running for 83 yards on 11 carries with a touchdown. He also sparked the Georgia run game and became a key factor for the Bulldogs offense, especially in their second half explosion. Also, transfers London Humphreys and Colby Young each caught touchdown passes from Carson Beck. I mean, Georgia had a slow start, but they really came out in that second half looking like a dominant team that we're so used to at this point. I mean, they knew Cade wouldn't be able to make those explosive plays, so they just loaded the box. And Clemson, in my eyes, played very conservatively, so you can't do that with Georgia and expect to win. What do you think about that?
That was my key to the game that we talked about on our Instagram Live. I said, we have to make those explosive plays. Me being a fan and an alum of Clemson, it was very frustrating to see because the first half of the game, I thought Clemson controlled the game very well.
Yeah.
Honestly, surprised me a good bit too in the first half. But then, when it was halftime, Clemson didn't make the adjustments that needed to be made. And you saw that. I thought we were, definitely outcoached towards the end as well. We did play super conservative. I also didn't understand why, all we had heard about was this receiving core and these 5-star receivers that they brought in, and they didn't get to play in the game until the fourth quarter. So that would be my question to Coach. Why all this hype? This was a position that was very lacked for us last year. And, you have 2 5-stars sitting on the bench. So for me, that's super frustrating. And, I can't wait to see what they do this week. Hopefully they make the adjustments that need to be made. And who knows? Maybe this will wake him up to have the chance to maybe go in that transfer portal and get the little pieces that you are missing.
I mean, one can only hope. I think my biggest frustration came in that first half when he did have that opportunity at 4-1 and another opportunity at 4-3. I'm like, you have to go for these. You have to keep the offensive side. I mean, you're only going to get so many opportunities against Georgia. So I was like, why are we playing scared at Clemson? We have an opportunity to do something. The offense is alive at the moment. And then second half happened.
I did think Cade looked a lot more confident in this game as opposed to last year. I thought he had a couple bright spots. Defense looked great. Obviously in the second half, they got their tail whipped. They're tired. They've been out there the whole time. So that is very hopeful for the rest of the season with how the defense played. And, hopefully Cade can get some other guys on the rotation and they can become more successful on offense.
I mean, they played the number 1 team in the country. It's not down and out yet. We have a long way to go. Also, with how Florida State's playing, maybe that game's not as hard for them. They're still a bubble team in my eyes. They still might make that 12-team playoff, but there's a lot to be desired from that team right now, and Georgia's everything we expected it to be.
Yes, we're definitely everything we expected, and I had a hard time even finding the game to watch last night. This TV thing has just aggravated me so much with these games. First off, Boston College, wow, what a fun team to watch last night. That was such a great game. Their quarterback, what a great night of football.
They really, really turned out. And I was, again, shocked to see it. I was shocked to see it with Georgia Tech, and I was shocked to see it with Boston College. But you know what? Maybe Florida State's not everything we thought they were. So
exactly. And even watching the Miami game and Florida game this past weekend, I think a lot of these ACC quarterbacks are doing really well this year. There's a lot of guys, Cam Ward, that really put on a show this past weekend that I think should definitely be in the eye moving forward.
I mean, to me, the Florida-Miami game, Miami came on top 41-17. It's honestly another disappointing loss in the Billy Napier era. And looking forward, Miami's schedule is less daunting than Florida. So I think they will definitely be in contender for that 12-team playoff, maybe even getting that bye week because of winning the ACC championship. But I mean, looking at Florida, their offense just had issues. I mean, their longest pass play was for 19 yards. You can't do much with that. And Cam Ward went out there and just picked Florida apart. And Miami now, as of today, is ranked 12th in the AP poll, and I think they might just keep moving up. But for me, Florida really needs to be more dynamic on defense and more explosive on offense because they're going to be playing Georgia and Texas and Ole Miss, and these teams aren't going to mess around.
So they definitely have to get creative, and I think that's one thing that lacked a lot in these games this past week. And I don't know if it's because of the first game. I'm not a coach. Maybe you do take that conservative route and you don't get too creative. A coach can answer that. But I think moving forward, you're going to have those explosive plays, especially playing in the SEC week in and week out. The talent is just too strong. You're going to have to adapt. You're going to have to be physical. And, going forward, that's what we're going to see is who can own up to that and week in and week out be able to handle that.
Now, the next game I want to look at LSU versus USC. I don't know if it's because it's the game of the season, but honestly, both coaches made some questionable clock decisions late in the game. The Tigers got the ball back with 8:38 left in the fourth quarter. They had a 17-13 lead, but they kind of gave the ball away too quickly. They would have been wise to just take its time and chew up some more of that clock. I mean, they rushed to the line. They failed to convert on the third down, and they punted the ball away and they took less than 2 minutes off of the game. So that was a really big mistake in my eyes with the LSU-USC game. I think, however, it kind of felt like a home game for them because I think Death Valley kind of showed out and they were loud and they were rooting for their team there. And there are a lot of positives because Nussmeier, their new QB, looked like he was completely in control of that LSU offense. He had big shoes to fill with Jaden Daniels leaving, and he delivered. He was comfortable. And if his first read wasn't there, he was able to look for another one. And I think he did a really, really great job. And he finished with an impressive 304 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I think for LSU, it's just a lack of discipline, too many preventable penalties. And I mean, right now in the AP poll, USC is 13th and LSU is 18th. They both have the full capability of making it to the 12-team playoff, but it's exciting to see where they're going to end up in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I think USC was definitely just the more physical team when it got down to it. I think LSU had multiple chances to put the game away and just never did. And so, that talks, and USC just came out on top. It is going to be interesting, though, with the new 12-team playoff with these losses, especially because, are they going to put a team in there that has 2 losses? Are they not? And I think going forward, that is going to be a conversation because now I feel like it's a lot of these losses become not as important when in the past, when we had the 14 playoff or when the playoff was never even existed yet, each game was so important. And I think now that the playoff has, expanded to 12, it almost makes those games kind of, oh, whatever, a loss. Okay, next. And beforehand, that used to be so important. And I don't know, I kind of miss that part about having a smaller amount in the playoff.
No, I totally agree. I mean, a 2-loss team can absolutely make the playoffs, and I think a lot are going to, especially in harder conferences like the SEC and the Big Ten. But it's whether or not those 3-loss teams make it, and we might have 1, 2. I mean, it's going to be really interesting moving on throughout this year. And another team I'm really excited to see what they do throughout the year is Texas A&M. I mean, we all thought we were at Kyle Field. It was the 4th largest crowd in Kyle Field history with 107,315 people there supporting their team. They were versus Notre Dame. They, however, lost the game 23-13. On both sides of the ball, the defensive side of the ball owned the day. It was a big battle between the two. No player had more than 100 yards, either rushing or receiving, and both quarterbacks finished with fewer than 200 yards passing. For Texas A&M, it's just there's a lot to clean up on that offense side of the ball. You really got to be more explosive and more consistent. And on Notre Dame, I mean, they probably have the clearest path to the college football playoffs. Their schedule really isn't that difficult from here on out. They are ranked 5 right now. That is as high as they can go because they don't have a true conference. But I think we are definitely going to be seeing Notre Dame in the playoffs. Whether or not we see A&M or not remains to be seen.
I think so too. They were an exciting team to watch, and defense obviously played lights out and very physical, and they were as good as advertised. So I'm excited to see what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. Next, we're going to highlight Alabama versus Western Kentucky. Basically a scrimmage here, guys. Most of these are. But we ended up being 63-0. Alabama produced 600 yards total offense, limiting Western Kentucky to just 145 total yards. And guys, this defense looks fast. You see them on one side of the field, the ball breaks out, they're there in 2 seconds. It's very impressive. I'm excited to see them up against some tougher offenses. Also, Jalen Milroe needed just 7 completions on 9 attempts to get 200 yards through the air, which led to 3 touchdowns. He also had 2 rushing scores. I mean, he's as advertised. He still has his mistakes. He still needs to work on his pocket awareness. I mean, he needs that ticker in his head being like, it's going to collapse on you, get rid of the ball or run it. I mean, there's nothing more you can say about that. It is week 1. Also, Ryan Williams, true 17-year-old who should be in his senior year of high school, was everything that was advertised. He touched the ball 2 times. He got 2 touchdowns. He ran for 139 yards in his first collegiate game. Very, very impressive. His second catch was extremely impressive because he actually got caught by the defense. He kind of shook him off and then ran all the way to the end zone. It was really cool to watch. And then on the defensive side, Keon Sabb got 2 interceptions in the first half. But, you know, Bama still had those stupid mistakes, which led to penalties early on. There was also 1 high snap. And I was sitting there like, didn't I watch this movie last year? I didn't really like it. It wasn't a lot of fun. But, you know, game 1, they're settling in. They are ranked 4th now in that AP poll. So I'm excited to see what they do this year. And next, I'm going to look at Arkansas and the Pine Bluff Golden Lions. Again, pretty easy game. 70-3 was the end score. I mean, by halftime, there were 444 yards total on the Arkansas side. They ended the half leading 49-0. Total, they had 687 yards of offense and had 9.8 yards per play. I mean, this was a very impressive start for Arkansas. It was really good to see from them as well. But, you know, next week they are playing Oklahoma State, who are now ranked 16th. So it's going to be a tough test ahead of them.
I think so too. And a lot of these teams this weekend put up 60-plus points.
Crazy.
Like, over 5 games. I'm looking there, I'm like, is this a basketball score? It's 70. What?
Yep, and our next team too, Auburn, 73 points to 3 to Alabama A&M. I mean, they started the night with a 34-yard touchdown, scored touchdowns on its next 2 possessions. I mean, Peyton Thorne was a big contributing factor. He looks like he's going to be a dynamite for them on their offense. They are playing the California Golden Bears next week, so I think it's going to be very similar. However, they are going to be playing harder teams moving along, so we're going to see if Auburn's offense can be just as dynamic against those stronger defenses.
So who do we have this week to talk about? Who are the games that we are looking at?
This week, I think we're going to be looking at that Texas and Michigan game. That's going to be a big, big game. Michigan this past week didn't look as strong as they did. However, Texas this past weekend against Colorado State did put up 52-0. All 3 of their transfers, Silas Bolden, Matthew Golden, and Isaiah Bond, found the end zone. Golden did so twice. Ewers looks just as strong as ever. And, you know, the Texas secondary was one of the biggest, question marks from last season. But after last Saturday, we can say it's definitely improved.
Yes.
Manning also came out. He made a big impact. He finished 5 for 6, passing for 95 yards and 1 touchdown. So, I mean, the Texas offense is looking really strong. They've made improvements in that secondary. And going up against a Michigan team who in week 1, and yes, it is only week 1, didn't look like that national championship caliber team. I think I'm picking Texas right now to win it, but we're going to see.
I'm picking Texas too. Partly because I hate Michigan too.
Well, I also want to talk about Oklahoma. They made a really strong start versus Temple. They won 51-3. It was their very first SEC game, as it was Texas's first SEC game. Oklahoma forced 6 turnovers, which was amazing. However, they finished 1 for 12 on third down. So there is a lot of work to do there. They also have one of the hardest schedules moving forward. They're playing Miami, they're playing Georgia, they're playing Tennessee, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss. I would say Florida State, but I don't know what they're going to be looking like anymore.
Yeah.
We have a really hard schedule coming up for them. So we're going to see how they continue to grow in development, but it is exciting that they did their first game in the SEC this year.
Yeah, it's exciting for them for sure. Mm-hmm. And I think the next game that we had was Kentucky, South Carolina at Kentucky.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be our first true SEC game. So South Carolina went against Old Dominion this week. Shockingly, the score was only 23-19. They were set as a 21-point favorite heading in, but the offense did struggle. They did start a redshirt freshman at quarterback, so it might take time for him to really get settled. And the defense did a lot for them. But the offense really will have to grow quickly, especially when facing their SEC counterpart, Kentucky, this week.
Yes. And they always play them well. I've gone to several of those games before, and they do play them well usually.
Yeah.
Their quarterback did have a couple bright spots this weekend, even though the score really doesn't say much about that. I did watch that game, and they should have a good pick there with him for a couple.
Yeah. He really just has to get settled in, and I think that they can do amazing things on the offense. Kentucky versus Southern Mississippi is another tale of the 31-0. They had a very dominant defense, holding USM to just 131 yards. They looked good, but they are playing teams like Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, Ole Miss, and that's going to be a big, big test for them. And their first test is coming against South Carolina. So we're going to see how those games shake out.
Yeah, I'm excited to see.
Another person I want to highlight, though, is Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. He played Furman, and he did not let up. He got 76-0, outgained Furman 772-172 in total yards. They committed just 3 penalties. They came away with 16 tackles for a loss, broke 19 chunk plays to Furman's 5. I mean, this was a strong start for Lane Kiffin. Lane wants that prize. He wants the SEC championship, and he wants that national championship. Yeah. So I think this is a team that, in my eyes, we are going to see in that 12-team playoff, and I think this is a team that could very well contend for that SEC champion. And today they are still ranked at 6th in the AP poll.
Yep, I agree. I definitely think they'll climb in that and stay in that zone. They seem pretty electric, pretty on fire, excited. I love Lane Kiffin. I think he's just a cool guy, a lot of character. But talking about character, too, I loved watching Coach Saban this weekend on game day.
It was so much fun.
Seeing his personality. He really let loose and was fun. And, I loved it. I loved seeing him in that kind of atmosphere.
It's also not game day unless Nick Saban's there.
No, and I'm sure for you wanted to see him in some capacity with this being the first year that he's not on the sideline.
Oh, absolutely. And it's also nice because he did his job at game day and then flew over, and he was actually there at the debut of Kalen DeBoer. So that was very exciting, too. Yeah, he was in the crowd. He was rooting us on. He had some of his former players there. So it was a really special moment. And then next week, they are honoring him with naming the field Saban Field. So that'll be a big deal during the South Florida game.
That's awesome. I think he mentioned on the set, I saw it, he said, "This is fun," or "I'm having fun."
What a good time.
That tells you everything you need to know. Well, the thing I want to talk about is, obviously, us big football fans, we have our stadium bucket lists and places that we love to go that aren't our home stadiums, but to go watch ball game. So I want to know, what is your favorite place to go and watch ball game? That's Alabama.
I think I would have to go with LSU Death Valley. I mean, when you go there, it is just electric. It is loud. Also, the tailgating is amazing. They have like true New Orleans cuisine out there. But you go there and it is just a different feeling. Like I said, when we were running down through their game, I really thought that Death Valley went to Vegas with them and they really showed out, and it was loud and it was dynamic, and it was like, oh, LSU is going to win this game because they have a home field advantage. Almost. Yeah. It didn't work out that way, but that's how you feel when you go to a Death Valley game. So that's definitely on my top.
Yeah, that's definitely one of mine too. I've been everywhere in the ACC. I've worked a couple non-conference games that Clemson's played against, and I actually really enjoyed Auburn. I liked going there. I actually worked a game there, but it reminds me a lot of Clemson's campus. Everything is together. A couple of the different buildings and things are the same. But I would also love to go to LSU, and I would love to go to the Swamp. Those are two that are on my bucket list that I would love to see.
I
would love to go to Texas as well. Have to put that in there too.
Absolutely. Alrighty, so we're going to be looking ahead to week 2. I'm just going to start with Alabama, South Florida. The spread right now is -31 Alabama. So I'm picking Alabama. I think Jalen Milroe has a lot to say about this game because he did not play it last year. He was benched. So I think he's really going to show out and make some moves on this Alabama, South Florida game. What about you?
Yep, that was my same thought. I'm rolling with the tide.
Yeah. Next up, I have Arkansas and Oklahoma State. The spread right now is 7.5 in favor of Oklahoma State.
I haven't watched enough on either one of them, so I'm gonna roll. I'm gonna roll with the Hogs.
All right. Now I'm going with Oklahoma State right now. They are ranked 16. They are supposed to be very dynamic on both sides of the ball, so we're gonna see what happens. But I'm going with Oklahoma State here. Next, we have Auburn and California. The spread is -13 Auburn, and I am picking Auburn. It's kind of another preseason game for me.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go with the Tigers.
Yeah. The next game up is Florida versus Samford. I think Florida has a lot to prove after last week. They don't want to lose 2 weeks in a row. So I'm picking Florida. They're going to come out there. They're going to be dynamic. They're going to learn from their mistakes, and they're going to grow. And that's who I'm going with.
Yeah, I see them coming back strong, hopefully, and making the adjustments that they need to make. They want to win. They don't want to lose. That's not the Florida program. They don't want to go out like that. So I fully see them making the adjustments.
Absolutely. Next, I have Georgia and Tennessee Tech.
Oh, well.
Could go either way.
Soon for me to talk about.
No, we all know Georgia's going to go out there. They're going to steamroll Tennessee Tech. It'll be an easy week for them. I think Bama and Georgia both have 2 very winnable games ahead of them. Then they have their bye week, and then they're going to be playing each other in week 5. So that's going to be the true test, I think, for both teams there. Next up, I have the true SEC matchup, Kentucky versus South Carolina. What do you think there?
I'm going with Kentucky. I think just with how last week went for South Carolina, there's still going to be just some major adjustments, especially at that quarterback position that they're going to have to figure out. And that takes a little bit of time, but with a guy that's, not as experienced yet, this is the kind of games that you need to play in to learn. And sometimes you don't know these things unless you go and play in these games. So some things you can't just coach or teach. You have to go and actually experience it. And so I think that's going to be a big thing for him. So I'm going to go with the Wildcats.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think South Carolina has a lot to learn, a lot of places to develop. So I'm taking Kentucky as the stronger option for that. And next, I have LSU and Nicholls. How do you feel about that?
Give me the Tigers.
All day long. I don't think they want to lose again.
I don't think so either. I really wish they could have put it away last week. I was really rooting for them.
Yeah, me too.
Hate that.
But, we have a long season ahead of us.
We do. Anything can happen. That's the crazy thing.
Absolutely.
We've already seen it.
We've seen it twice.
We've seen it twice, really. Especially last night.
Next, we have Ole Miss and Middle Tennessee. I mean, I'm taking Ole Miss. I'm taking Lane Kiffin to cover the spread, which is -41 in his favor. There's nothing more you can say about that. Lane Kiffin's going to roll.
I don't think anyone's stopping them right at the moment.
Next up is Mississippi State versus Arizona State.
Give me the Bulldogs.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Arizona then. All right. Next up, I have Tennessee and NC State.
Tennessee. They looked pretty good this past weekend.
They look very dominant. Nico's looking really good, leading the team. So I am taking Tennessee this week over NC State. Next, I have Vanderbilt versus Alcorn State.
Vanderbilt was so fun to watch. That is the place where I used to work. I was an intern there. So to see that happen for them was so exciting. I loved every minute of it. I think they're going to be on this high horse and have this confidence right now. And, I'm going to go with Vanderbilt.
I am too. I love watching them this week. We always love overtime. That's free football. We want more and more and more always. So we were really excited to see Vandy pull it out last week, and we're going to pull it out this week as well. All right, next I have Texas A&M versus McNeese.
Give me the Aggies.
All day long. They want to settle back into it. They want to get that win. They want to get their season on track. So I'm taking the Aggies all day long. Next is Missouri versus Buffalo.
Missouri.
Absolutely. The spread right now is -31.5, and I'm taking Missouri to cover, if not exceed. Next is Oklahoma versus Houston, the last of the easy games.
Yes, go Sooners.
Absolutely. And finally, I have that Texas at Michigan. Texas going to the big house.
I'm going with Texas. They're too exciting to watch right now. There's too many good things happening on both sides of football. I think they'll roll in there and do just fine.
I agree. They think they're way too dynamic on offense. They are very much improved on defense, especially in that secondary. And I think they're going to go into Michigan and win big.
I feel like we should end this the right way. And we should cheers. Here's to Texas
and Oklahoma for joining the SEC and completing their first week as SEC teams. So drink up, you two. You're going to need it.